Faye is head of health, equity, and social impact at Healthline Media. That was a real tongue twister for some reason. You're a former healthcare attorney. She's also an author, speaker, and advocate. And we're here to talk about a really important issue, which is how brands are tackling the rising epidemic, frankly, of youth and mental health challenges. So tell us a bit about what's happening in this space.
Yeah, I think first I just want to add to that bio. I'm also a mom of teenagers, so
yeah,
this
it feels very real as well as
near and dear to my heart. Absolutely. You know, the youth are really struggling right now.
Yeah.
The CDC released a report in March of 2022. 1 in 3 kids are feeling sad. They're feeling hopeless. For the first time, a panel of medical experts recommended screening for children 8 to 18 for depression and anxiety. So, I mean, this is a pervasive issue.
Yeah.
And one thing that surprised me in doing the research kind of, for this discussion is that these rates were rising even before the pandemic. So some of the issues during the pandemic only amplified what's been going on with our kids. So a lot of us are thinking, well, once they get back to school, we get back to normal, things will rectify. When in reality, this is an area that we have to focus on, and it's urgent.
It sounds like the pandemic was opened a Pandora's box that was already kicking around there.
Yeah.
We're here to hopefully talk a bit about the solutions. It'd be great for you to talk to, what Healthline Media are able to do and other solutions that.
Yeah, we're really at the front lines,
Yeah.
of this. Kids aren't going to their parents, they're not going to their teachers. They're opening up their phones and devices, and they're looking to see what the next TikTok star is going to do a dance about, something that they're feeling. And it really is incumbent upon us to really combat misinformation. And one thing that Healthline is committed to is every piece of content that we publish is medically reviewed. We also want to make sure that it's compassionate and we use conscious language. That way, when kids are at their most vulnerable and they're putting those things in the search engine, we're not stigmatizing them for what they're feeling.
Yeah, we've had a very high-profile case in the UK around use of social media. It feels very, very pertinent and so significant to have those checks and balances in place.
Yeah.
For the brands in the room and the parents in the room, or those who are involved in the care of young people, how can we get involved in helping with this issue?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we become that safe space, for kids to land. I know many of you probably heard about the NyQuil, chicken, debacle. People were cooking chicken in NyQuil, and I think your first instinct as an adult is to chuckle a little bit, like, bad idea, right? We know it's not a good idea. But kids, their brains are still developing up until the age of 25. So they see things like that, and they are under the assumption that social media and these websites are real and that they're safe. And they're not understanding that, hey, this is something that can have life-altering consequences. So we need to talk about these things. We need to provide information not just for the children, but for their parents and for educators to make sure that they know, the right language to use in talking to their children about these things that can seem really inviting and enticing, because people want to be like their peers. They want to be able to say that they're doing something that other people are doing. And we need to be able to talk to them about these things in a way that's relatable and understanding.
Can you help parents with that conversation, though? Because often it's, how do I broach it? What language should I use? Are they going to shut down? Are there any ideas or suggestions that you have to help that?
Yeah, well, Healthline, we just, not to plug Healthline again,
no,
we had a great,
as well. Go on.
a great package called Youth in Focus. I see some of the architects of that in the audience right now. And a big part of that was providing parents with the right language and the right tools to have these conversations. Look, I'm a mom of a teenager. He can be scary, right? And sometimes you need to have the right language to start these conversations so they don't shut down the minute that you sit down to talk. Yeah. So it's really important to provide those resources.
Absolutely. So if you think that media organizations and brands get involved now, what's your hope for how this crisis is actually going to evolve in the future?
Yeah. Pie in the sky, I see a world where kids don't feel stigmatized to have these conversations, where they have the right vehicles to find truth and to find accuracy. I mean, media is so powerful in those dialogues. You mentioned Molly Russell, the 14-year-old girl who died by suicide in the UK. And for those of you unfamiliar with it, her death, the coroner ruled her death being caused by social media. Because once they were able to go through her computer, they realized that a lot of what she was engaging with, the algorithm was just providing things about self-harm, and there were all these things in her bookmarks. And it just broke my heart, because this is a child Yeah, I mean, it was a child looking for help, and looking to find a way. So, providing those right safeguards and those avenues, gone are the days where, you can lock away things that you don't want your kids to see with a lock and key. Chances are, if you have access to them, your kids have access to them. And it's so important to be able to provide the right safeguards, and again, empowering parents and educators to be able to be that roadblock and those gatekeepers. So, we're sort of, caregivers, inherited caregivers as the media organization, so we need to be responsible.
You mentioned, the world of TikTok and the world of influencers, because obviously that's a really potent and powerful communication tool.
Yeah.
It'd be great to get your view on how that works to the positive as well as potentially to the negative.
Yeah, I mean, I think, especially during the pandemic, right, social media was a lifeline for so many people. It's certainly not all bad. We found community, we found like-minded people. I know myself, I was one of the many that started stress baking, and it became a whole thing. You find groups, on Facebook that you can relate to. So it's not all bad. I know for my children during the pandemic, it was really important for them to be on Snapchat and to be engaging with friends. So there certainly, aren't negative things. Last week I saw a great Adweek interview with Vaishnavi, the head of youth for Meta, and she was saying that they view every programming aspect under the standard of best interest of the child. What is in the best interest of our child, and that's how they're crafting their safeguards. So I think sometimes it scares us to think about telling our kids, hey, you've been on this for a long time, or let me redirect you. If these organizations are taking the steps to implement these safeguards, then, then we can too. So I think it's, like anything in moderation.
But do you think, like, clear time, you can tell I'm a mum as well, so asking, what should I do exactly? But, very specific time limits and things like that, sort of that infrastructure, that framework, as babies they go, this is bedtime. As they get into teens, this is screen time off now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we all know when you consume, you see one thing that's, I don't know, maybe you're watching somebody talk about ADHD, you watch one video, then there's a next one, and they keep feeding it and feeding it. And as adults, it's hard to turn off the phone and say, okay, I've had enough of this. So it's certainly helpful to us as caregivers, parents, and educators to help our children put up those safeguards.
Yeah, mine is property. I can lose hours of my time on property. So is there anyone who's doing this really well, or any countries where you look to and you go, actually, do you know what, we should be doing this here in the US?
Yeah, I don't know about countries, but I was taken by Vaishnavi's plan with Facebook. I mean, I was taking copious notes when she was talking, because I just thought it's so important to have an eye on this. We need to be protecting our children. We need to be thinking about it at every inflection point, from ideation to marketing. How are they consuming these things, and how do we make sure that it's safe?
And what's the role of government legislation? The verdict in the UK will precipitate change, undoubtedly.
Yeah.
Legislation is a powerful tool. Do you think that's coming down the line in the US?
I love that question, because it kind of speaks to my past experience in the legal world. I mean, we're all talking about it, right? The decision that this coroner made, it has a powerful, powerful role, and I think we can all continue to advocate that in the way that we vote, right? In a couple of weeks, we'll all be voting again, and we should be thinking about these issues.
But do you think that's reluctance? Because obviously there's freedom and choice and all of those pieces. It's a tricky path to navigate, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But children need our protection, for sure. So, obviously we want them to be able to explore and learn, but we know that, some of these things can be really big rabbit holes, and we can think about Molly Russell, as just an example of that.
So if your offspring, I don't know whether you've got a girl or a boy, but your boys, if your teen boys were sitting here, what would they be telling me about their mental health experiences and what they're looking for? Yeah,
I mean, I think, like many kids during the pandemic, they just kind of struggled with, being isolated from their friends and things. And I think I was joking actually with one of my colleagues earlier, that it's so hard sometimes to talk to them. And my one son, I always tell this story of like, it's so hard to get him to hang out with me. I usually force him to. My husband's like, you're coming on way too strong, but I'm gonna keep doing it. So, I like to take bike rides, and I usually invite him out, and it's always like a little grumpy, but he does it, and one day I was kind of busy with work, and I was like, oh, he doesn't really want to do it anyway, and he came into my office, and he was like, ugh, we're going to go for a ride. Like, you know, I can tell he wanted to.
Yeah.
You know, and
that was an important moment for
it
him.
was such an
in your
important moment,
relationship.
yeah, because I thought, okay, he doesn't want to be bothered, but it was valuable, that time to spend. I thought he just could spend days on his computer.
Yeah.
But I think they want that. I think they want the structure, you know, they want those guidelines, and they want that support.
So it sounds like listening to those cues
For
or
sure.
direct demands for bike rides is really
Yes.
Yeah. That's a great note to end on. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
absolutely.
I could talk to you about this for hours, but
Me too.
yeah, really
All
appreciate
right.
your time. Thank you.
Thank you.